Hello and welcome to Bostonian Rap. My name is Rachel Meiselman. This is a very special episode. As many people know, I normally air on Fridays, but here we are Monday night, Halloween, and I am very honored to have once again as a guest, Ken Nasif. He is a retired Massachusetts state judge, and he is also one of the deputy state directors here in Massachusetts of the Donald J. Trump presidential campaign. Ken, once again, I'm very honored to have you here as a guest.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so the viewers might not know this, but we started a conversation last Thursday on the People's Platform, and you'll be able to see that very, very soon. And it was such a good conversation, we thought we would continue it tonight. So we will be continuing our discussion about the 2016 presidential election. There's so much to talk about, and there's so very much at stake. I do hope people call in. We are here ready to answer any questions that you might have. So let's get into it, Ken. Let's just dive right on in.
Sure.
And so we got a chance to get to know you somewhat during the last interview, but I really want to kind of unpack your background, so to speak, a little bit more. Really, it's one that I respect. A lot of hard work, a lot of grit and determination. And as we revealed to viewers last Thursday on the People's Platform, and again, people will see that very shortly, you attended Boston Latin School.
I did.
And subsequently, you followed in the footsteps of your mother, and you went to Suffolk University Law School. And that's actually very, very impressive, because you think in this day and age, it's so difficult for women to be taken seriously, even in the legal profession, even though there are a lot of female attorneys now. But for your mother to have attended Suffolk University Law School some years ago, that's really quite something.
It is. Well, actually, my aunt also did too, back in the 40s. And I guess my mother must have attended in the late 30s. Actually, my mother went to Suffolk University because she wanted to be a journalist. And it was one of the few colleges then and perhaps now that have a major in journalism. So that was her major, journalism. Then her sister, my aunt, went to Suffolk Law School, became an attorney around 1940 or the late 30s. So both of them.
What a wonderful couple of role models. Again, it's, very easy to say, well, now we have a lot of female attorneys, but there's still difficulties and there's still barriers, so to speak. I can't even imagine what it must have been like in the 30s and 40s for your mother and aunt, respectively.
Well, my aunt actually told me when she first passed the bar, women were not allowed to sit with the other lawyers inside the bar, believe it or not. The few cases she had in court, sure, she had to sit outside of the so-called bar. As it turned out, she ended up doing a lot of real estate transactions and title searches, so she wasn't in court that much. But the few times she was, she felt offended, quite frankly, and she never forgot it, although she lived long enough to see a major change in our legal system.
Well, there's that, isn't there? So you went to Suffolk University Law School, and you passed the bar yourself in 1969.
Correct.
And you started your career in the U.S. Veterans Administration.
I did.
What was that like?
That was interesting. When I first passed the bar in 1969, in those days, I don't know how it is now, but you would take the bar exam in June, and you wouldn't be notified until November as to whether or not you passed. So you had almost a half of a year of anxiety and waiting to find out if you get that letter. And a lot of folks would try and take up their time preliminarily working in a law office as maybe a law clerk or something like that. I decided I wanted to teach school. It was something I often thought about. So I signed up as a substitute school teacher, and I got a phone call the very first school day in September of 1969 asking me to report to the Jeremiah E. Burke High School in Dorchester, which I did. And after a couple of days of going there every day, I really liked the kids and I liked the work. the headmaster came to me and she asked me, would you be interested in working here full-time as a permanent sub? I didn't know what a permanent sub was, but I had nothing else to do, so I accepted that, and I ended up being a regular teacher with a homeroom class and meeting with parents and the whole 9 yards. And it was something I'll never forget. I really enjoyed it, and I really missed the kids when I had to leave. But in any event, I did pass the bar, practiced briefly in the Boston area, and then I ended up taking a position as Assistant Regional Counsel for the United States Veterans Administration, servicing veterans, a lot of Vietnam veterans at that time, and Second World War veterans and Korean veterans, much less now, of course, dealing with them, their benefits, their children's rights to benefits, widows' benefits, things of that nature.
It's interesting for me listening to your story because in many ways, you yourself were kind of ahead of the curve, and you come from a family that has been ahead of the curve. I mean, now a lot of people talk about rights for veterans and that we need to do more for veterans, but here you were doing it several decades ago. And I have to say that in addition to praising you for being ahead of the curve, I want to also interject a comment that it must be awfully frustrating for you to see that maybe some of the problems that you dealt with decades ago still exist and maybe are even worse today?
They are, and it's sad to say. I enjoyed my work. I had a special place in my heart for veterans, and that's why I took the position that was offered to me, thinking I could make a difference in my own small way, and perhaps I did, I don't really know, but the problems then I think are magnified now. We had similar problems, but not to the same extent. Drug abuse was not as big as it is now. Veterans waiting for care at the 3 or 4 VA hospitals here in the Commonwealth did wait occasionally, were not serviced properly, and I did what I could to address that at the time, but I think it's become a much greater issue and concern now, which one of the issues that Donald Trump brought up in his campaign, I'm glad to say, and I think he hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, he has talked quite frequently about veterans, and I too am glad. And I think part of his appeal stems from the fact that people feel like it's more than just rhetoric. Because, you know, we're at a stage, and we'll talk about this, you know, this kind of idea, we'll keep on coming back to it throughout our interview, that people really feel like at this point we really do need more than rhetoric, that we're at a crossroads, and we've reached a critical point, like a tipping point, so to speak, and you know, decisive action needs to be taken. Now, I want to kind of keep on moving along your career path. So, after working for the U.S. Veterans, administration, you went on and became an assistant U.S. attorney.
Correct.
And you did that from 1974 to 1983.
To 1982.
1982.
Correct.
And you actually accepted an appointment to be a Massachusetts judge.
I did.
In 83.
In 82.
It's 82,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Went from 1970 to 1974, I was in the Veterans Administration Legal Department. From 1974 to 1982, I served as Assistant United States Attorney for Massachusetts.
Okay.
And then from 1982 until I retired, I served as a Justice of the Commonwealth Trial Court.
All right, so 1982 onwards. And you were, again, as you said, you were in trial courts, juvenile court. And I want to bring up a story that I brought up during our initial interview on the People's Platform last week. And it focuses on Hillary Clinton and her book that at the time was just, recently released. And it was, of course, now the famous or infamous, depending on how you feel about what she wrote, It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. And I do want to talk about it again because it really struck me. I think it speaks to, for me, and obviously you'll be able to respond to this yay or nay, but why you support Trump so strongly. But you were talking about how you think that parents need to be more present, that it's the parents and not anyone else who's responsible for the well-being of the child, and that the parents need to have a commitment not only to each other, but also to that child.
Absolutely.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
It does, and it completely debunks Hillary Clinton's premise that it takes a village to raise a child. It does not take a government and society to do it. It's up to the parents. It's up to the family. And when you have so many family problems, as we've seen over the last 20, 30 years developing, divorce, breakdown of the family, children born out of wedlock, mothers on welfare, having children who end up on welfare, who have children who end up on welfare, it becomes a real problem. And that is the problem. And I think when you say, well, it takes a village, let society do it, let the city of Boston do it, let welfare people do it. No, that's not the right way. It takes a family to be responsible for their own.
I would agree with that. I would. I think that if you bring a child into the world, I'm not saying you need to be wealthy, certainly not. Or so many people would not be parents, and so many of these people who are parents are wonderful parents despite not having wealth. But I think that you do need to be realistic about the challenges that are involved with being a parent. There are tremendous rewards, but there are also challenges, and so you want some kind of fiscal stability, and you do want to say to yourself, okay, well, this is a commitment. And it's not just for a certain length of time, it's a lifelong commitment. At one point, my child will be independent, but until that time, I certainly have a great responsibility vis-a-vis him or her or them. And even after my child or children become independent, I'm still mom or dad. I don't want to use the word offspring something, but it's you still have some kind of responsibility, for lack of a better word. You don't stop being a parent.
That's right. You never do, really. That's true. And my parents never stopped being parents to me. Again, not to get back to Hillary Clinton, I'm not here for that reason, but if you take her philosophy and the point she's trying to make, you can just give up your responsibility and let society take care of your children. All you do is give birth to them, and then everything, you want your stuff for your children. And unfortunately, children who live in that type of an environment end up living that way themselves, and they don't get to learn responsibility. And
sometimes respect.
And respect, certainly. And that's why I had a problem with her book and with her philosophy. And I know I was interviewed on that subject some years ago by the local press in Attleboro, Mass. In connection with a case that I was handling in court. And it just came out of me that I disagreed with Hillary Clinton's philosophy.
Spontaneous reaction.
Right. We were talking about, child cases at the time. And I guess that sort of stuck with me these years because it's been brought to my attention before.
Okay, well, why don't we go to the first break of the night? We'll continue to talk about Ken Nasif's career, but we're going to start shifting the focus of the interview. We want to know, of course, what attracted him to Trump. Why is he such a big, ardent supporter? Okay, but first, that quick break.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
They say that when you're facing extreme danger, your life flashes before you. If you think that's sad, consider facing it before you even have enough life to flash before your eyes. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Deaths and injuries can be prevented by using the right car seat. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to know what is appropriate for each age and size.
If you store your guns properly.
So not just anyone can get to them.
I'll feel safer when I'm playing outside.
Safer when walking home.
I won't have to tell so many family members. I'm sorry.
I won't hear as many scary stories. Or scary news reports.
I won't have to hold someone's hand and shout you're gonna make it.
And I won't have to tell my kids, this isn't a drill.
Please.
Please,
Please. Please.
Please.
do it for us.
For us. Do it for us.
Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. If you own a firearm and are not using it, please be responsible and be sure that it's stored in a safe place. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org.
Hello and welcome back to Bostonian Rap. My name is Rachel Meiselman and I have tonight as a special guest Ken Nasif. He is one of the Deputy State Directors here in Massachusetts for the Donald J. Trump presidential campaign. He is also a retired Massachusetts state judge. And we have been just kind of walking everybody through his career path, which is actually quite impressive. And it also shows a strong commitment to public service.
That's a fair statement, yeah.
That's something that's very important to you. So, became a judge in 1982, and you try to continue doing a lot of good for as many people as you possibly could. What is it about public service that is so appealing to you?
Well, to me, it's very fulfilling. I like to try and help people. I like to try and help society. I feel a part of society, so I feel an obligation to give something back. And to be able to do that and to get paid for doing that is kind of a nice thing, especially if you end up in a position where you feel you're making a difference and you're doing something you've always wanted to do. So all in all, I have enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to anybody who's considering a career in public service, certainly.
Okay, so we have someone who comes from a family of strong role models, including strong female role models, a lifetime of public service. You certainly come across as, I think, humble. You're not bouncing off the walls. You're not vain. You're not boastful. So some people might say, okay, well, this is certainly not someone that I would associate with Donald Trump, with his campaign. You mean to tell me that this is one of his deputy state directors here in Massachusetts? What would you say to that?
I would probably say that people who think that way don't have a complete understanding of what I believe to be is the real Donald Trump. What he means, what he's saying, what he's trying to do, and what his message is. You know, he's bigger than life. He's got a big personality.
Very flamboyant.
Flamboyant, big ego, no question about it. He's all of those things. But if you can put all that aside and listen to what his message is, that is the most important thing. And his message resonates with myself and most of the folks that I associate with. That's the short answer, I think, to your question.
And I think it doesn't need to be any longer than that. I think that says enough. I think that, you know, other members of the media have painted him in a certain light, and, you know, a narrative is kind of sprung up around him. And there's a lot of talk about him, of course, being sexist and racist and anti-Semitic and xenophobic. I have to ask, Do you think, I am going to push it, do you think that there's anything to that? Or do you think that people have become, I hate to say it, but too politically correct? I mean, I hate to say it, but only because it's become such a cliche thing to say among people in our political circles. Do you think, though, that people may have become too politically correct, and so anything that doesn't kind of follow a prescribed line of rhetoric, the knee-jerk reaction is racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, xenophobic?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. That's very true. I've said myself a couple of times on similar interviews or when I've spoken with folks, I would come out and say, listen, I'm not politically correct. I open up by saying that. I've done that years ago. In Donald Trump's case, yeah, it's true. He's not politically correct. He's not a polished, artful politician who has a way of saying things that you're supposed to say that, sounds nice. He's very blunt, he's very honest, and he's very straightforward. In answer to your previous questions, no, I do not think he's xenophobic or homophobic or racist or anti-Semitic or any of those things. And if you look at his life of achievements and the decisions he's made and the positions that he's placed people in and the status of his own children, that disproves all of those accusations. He's had women in the highest levels of the Trump organization, several of whom I have met and spoken with, both at the Republican National Convention, because I was one of the elected delegates,
Sure.
and outside of that. His daughter, who means the world to him, converted to Judaism. She is Jewish, and she married a Jewish man, and he's very proud of that, and he loves his grandchildren.
Well, that's, I have to say that whenever people accuse Donald Trump of being anti-Semitic, anything for that matter, I mean, I do agree with you, but I do need to ask the questions, not because, I'm pandering to certain people who might be watching, because that's not my style either. But I think that when you have people or have a person who does make statements that are so outside of what we've come to accept as acceptable, you do, I think, to be fair, have to ask yourself questions. And I think that's only right.
Of course. But you have to begin each premise with his personality. He's outgoing. He's the kind of a guy you can have a beer with,
Sure.
and talk about salty things, curse a little if you want. He's a typical alpha male, okay? That's what he is.
A lunchbox billionaire.
Exactly. I call him a blue-collar billionaire.
Blue collar, that'll
But
work too.
this is what alpha males talk about. They're like him. They talk about the things he talks about in the same manner. You can hold that against him if you want, but what's more important is not his presentation or the way he says things, his actions, his accomplishments, and the messages that he's trying to deliver throughout this
So
political
you're saying
campaign.
look at the whole picture.
Absolutely.
I think that is fair, because whether people like Donald Trump or not, regardless of what they might be saying, allegations are one thing, facts are another. And what is a fact is that he had women working for him. He entrusted them with very important decisions long before many other people were doing it in the business world. So that's undeniable.
Absolutely.
And that's something worth considering.
I mean, Hillary Clinton hasn't hired a person in her life. She's never had a business, nor has her husband. She's never put a woman anywhere except in connection with her work in the State Department. I guess Uma Abedin, I suppose, is the only person she's given a lot of importance to, and we see what's happened there. We follow the news.
If we follow the news, right. And so let me get back to something I started to say related to accusations of his anti-Semitism. So as you say, I mean, his daughter, Ivanka, she certainly did. She actually did. She converted to Judaism. And so her children are Jewish. And, you know, his son-in-law plays a very prominent role in his campaign. I mean, as someone who is Jewish, I will tell you that if you're talking about someone who has problems with Jewish people, you're really not going to be too happy if one of your children converts
Absolutely.
to Judaism. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of funny to me that people would try to persist in pushing that part of the Donald Trump is an ogre narrative. If you want to criticize them for other things, people have a right to think what they want. They're entitled to their opinions, but they're not entitled to their truths. That's what I always say. And again, another fact is that his daughter converted. So whether people like him or not, you know, he has a Jewish child, Jewish grandchildren, and a Jewish son-in-law.
And he's very proud of it and talks about it all the time.
Really?
Absolutely.
It's true.
Absolutely. And with respect to this issue of immigrants from the Middle East, he did come out and say, and actually I agree with him, and I think most people do, that he wanted to temporarily, and I underscore the word temporarily, suspend issuing visas to people from Middle East areas where terrorism is located, just until we can determine and get a better system to vet these people. He doesn't just want them coming over in droves because we know we're going to have problems. And because he said that, which makes perfect sense, because he said that, he was attacked viciously by the Democrats and by the media, and it was considered, no doubt about it, this man is anti-Arab, he's anti-Muslim. I come from an Arabic background, to be very frank with you.
You can be very frank with me, Ken, and I know you.
And I agree with the man 100%. I don't want these people coming over here from the Middle East. I don't care what country it is. If there's any question of
a country
security.
that has been severely, particularly affected by terrorism, it's an issue. I think we do have a caller. Excuse me.
Yes.
Hi.
Well, thank you for what you do, and I have a question for your guest. The theme of Donald Trump's campaign is Make America Great Again. My question is, when did, in your opinion, when did America stop being great? And great in what way? And I'll listen and learn, and thank you for the opportunity to ask you this question.
Well, thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think there's any day on a calendar you can go to and put your finger on it and say, this is the day that America was no longer great. I think it's been a gradual slide. Regardless of Democrats in office or Republicans in office, it's been a gradual slide that I have noticed over the last 30 years, I'll say. And in particular, the last 8 years have been unbearable. We now have the smallest military we've ever had in many years. Our relations around the world are not what they are anymore. Our enemies are not afraid of us. They're emboldened now. Our allies, they don't trust us anymore. Our economy is stagnant. It's gotten worse over the last 8 years. People are out of work. People are being paid less now than they were some years ago in many situations, and they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And this problem we have began, admittedly, even before President Obama was elected president, and I understand that. But I do think with his philosophy and the way he's dealt with this problem, and the way Hillary Clinton has assisted him and has indicated she's going to deal with these problems, it's gotten much, much worse at a much, much faster pace. And that is why we need to make America great again. We have to rebuild our military, rebuild our roads, rebuild our bridges. We've got to get jobs for people, bring companies back to America, employ the unemployed people in America, and make America great again.
Again, thank you so much for that question, sir. It was lovely, and thank you for your kind words. Okay, well, you know what? That leads us to our second break of the night. Do continue to tune in. It'll be more talk about Trump and the 2016 presidential election.
If you store your guns properly,
So not just anyone can get to them.
I'll feel safer when I'm playing outside.
Safer when walking home.
I won't have to tell so many family members. I'm sorry.
I won't hear as many scary stories or scary news reports.
I won't have to hold someone's hand and shout you're gonna make it.
And I won't have to tell my kids, this isn't a drill.
Please,
Please,
please, please,
Please.
do it for us.
for us. Do it for us.
Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. If you own a firearm and are not using it, please be responsible and be sure that it's stored in a safe place. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed all that.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
When you're out there, there's no telling what you'll find.
I see it, I see it. Oh, look at you.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Hello and welcome back to Bostonian Rap. My name is Rachel Meiselman. On tonight's show, I have Ken Nasif as a very special guest. We're continuing our conversation from last week. He is one of the deputy state directors right here in Massachusetts of the Donald J. Trump presidential campaign. He is also a retired Massachusetts state judge. And we have just been talking about what has attracted Ken to Donald Trump and why other people are attracted to Donald Trump. And we're starting to get into, courtesy of the great question we had from our caller, what exactly is at stake in this election? And I want to pick up on something you said, you know, people working 2 and 3 jobs, making less money, and that really is the truth. When I was growing up, I'm 44. I remember, and it doesn't seem like that long ago, so that's what's particularly alarming to me, but I remember not too long ago, if you worked 2 and 3 jobs, it's because you were really trying to get ahead. You had a goal and you were trying to put money away for something. Maybe you were trying to save up for a college fund for your child or children, or maybe you wanted a second home or a summer home. Now people are working 2 and 3 jobs.
To make ends meet.
To make ends meet, and they're barely doing that. Yep. And there are a number of people who are working so very hard, barely making ends meet, and you know what? They're becoming comfortable with that. Not that that's what they want for themselves, but they've just kind of resigned themselves to the fact that this is how it is. Now, I have a huge problem with that. That's just not what I know of my hometown. That's not what I know about my home state. It's not what I know about my country. This isn't something that's comfortable for me, that people resign themselves to never getting ahead or just living a life where they feel grateful to be able to keep their heads above water. Speak to that.
Well, that's been my experience too. Growing up, when I was, working my way through college and law school, which I did, I had a goal in mind. the funds were being put aside so I could help pay for my education. And then I went ahead and had my career. But as you say, people are doing this now just to make ends meet. And I think it's due to the economy. It's due to the lack of jobs. It's due to the inability of companies to pay people higher wages. And it's due to companies moving out of the country, producing their goods in Mexico and in other countries. And it's due, in my judgment, in large part to the policies of the Obama administration. Donald Trump is a businessman. He is probably the most successful businessman in the world or close to it. And I think most folks would agree with that, whether they like him or not. And we need a businessman in the White House at this crucial time. Somebody who will bring us back to fiscal sanity, reduce taxes, improve the economy, create jobs, bring those corporations back to America, and get us going in the right direction. We've been going in a very, very bad direction for the last 8 years or so. And I fear that if Hillary Clinton is elected, what you see is what you're going to continue to get, and worse.
And, you know, so that's a powerful statement, and I have one of my own. I think that, you know, you do need someone who understands the business world, because I think he understands that when they come out with these statistics about what the unemployment rate is, I think he understands that that's not really what it is. You know, and, you know, people in the Obama administration, you know, if you sat down and talked with them, if you listen to them in interviews, there'll be an admission that this is not necessarily taken into account everybody.
That's right.
So, for instance, part-time workers, okay, people who want to work full-time jobs but are not. Then there are people, and again, this speaks to my alarm that I expressed, you know, just expressed, that people are settling for less. They've just given up. People who have given up looking for work.
That's the largest segment. People have just out of the workforce and they've given up looking for jobs. They're not counted in these statistics that we're hearing.
So it's just, it's heartbreaking to me.
It is.
And I think that a lot of people are drawn to Trump because they feel like he's someone that understands that he understands that these statistics that are being released don't speak to the whole story. They don't tell everybody's story, that people are being left out. And I'll tell you another story. I was walking today, you know, I was on break, an hour-long break, you know, lunch break from work, and I was walking past a man, and he was pretty well covered up, and he was sleeping in the doorway. This is in broad daylight. And there was a sign that he had, and it read something along the lines of, you know, I'm homeless, but I'm not invisible. And just honestly, none of this is okay for me. None of this is okay. It's, you know, people have to feel like they matter. And I feel that regardless of who wins this election, that we need some serious changes. We really need some serious changes, because I think we're on a course. No, I know we're on a course that's not sustainable. And so I ask you what attracted you to Donald Trump, but at the same time, I'm giving you an answer. Yeah. I'm asking you for your comment as I'm responding to my own question.
But what you're saying is very obvious. I mean, you're 100% right, Rachel. Things have to change. We can't keep going the way we are going. The country is bankrupt. Our debt is higher than it's ever been. Barack Hussein Obama has created as much debt, more than all the presidents before him combined. And Hillary Clinton thinks it's great. They both think the world is wonderful and America is in great shape. And there will be no changes with Hillary Clinton. Nothing. Neither Hillary Clinton nor Barack Obama ever had, in my opinion, a real job. They never ran a business. They never created a job for anybody. They never signed a paycheck. And if we continue with that mentality, I call it elitism. I consider them elitists. In my opinion, they both look down their nose at us. They think they know what's best for us. Donald Trump is not that way at all. He's just a regular guy who sees it like it is and tells it like it is. And we need a guy like him who will admit the problems in America and directly confront those problems. And he talks about them all the time. Hillary Clinton doesn't, and Barack Obama doesn't. He talks about the problems of the inner cities. What other presidential candidate comes out and talks about the violence in Chicago? The proliferation of murders in Philadelphia, Chicago, New York. He wants to deal with these problems. But you first have to admit they exist.
Right, and you do have to address it. He's been criticized for that, but you do have to address it, because if you don't, you're not looking the problems in the eye. But because it's Donald Trump, he tries to address them, and people attack him for being insincere or painting these communities with a broad brush. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a bit. Now for the third break of tonight's show.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs. And you learned how to not ignore yours. I discovered how to make healthier meals. And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Get caught buzzed driving, and you could do some hard time.
Craig, knock it off.
Sorry, Mom. It could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And that could set you back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
You taught him how to hit a baseball. How to hit a receiver. The strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
Hello and welcome back to Bostonian Rap. My name is Rachel Meiselman, and I have as a very special guest tonight Ken Nasif. He is one of the Deputy State Directors for the Donald J. Trump presidential campaign. So before we went to our third break of the night, we were talking about the course upon which this country is currently set and how it is no longer sustainable. And another thing I kind of want to bring up, have your input, issues about human rights and issues about alliances that our country needs to have. Because it's all fine and well to say that America needs to take care of its own first before helping others. And I think that that's an argument that can be made for any country. But the reality is, in my humble opinion, is that, you know, we're not currently living in a world where we can really afford to cut ourselves off from other people. And I think that human rights, civil rights, on a broader scale, human rights is something that is fundamental to the American fabric. And I think that we need to have strong alliances, but I do think that we need to know who our allies are. So there's been a lot of criticism, for instance, toward President Obama on account of his actions vis-a-vis Cuba. He was very slow, the Obama administration, President Obama was very slow to declare that there was a genocide going on being carried out by ISIS against the Christians in that area and the Yazidis. Currently, Venezuela, Maduro. There was a declaration from the Obama administration on, really, quite frankly, the scary events that are going on over there. I mean, it really has become, I think, a dictatorship. But it was really rather tepid. What would you say to this? Do you think that this is an issue as well? You know, the issue of having a government that stands up to dictators and is not afraid to take the lead and is not afraid to defend human rights, and a government that is led by someone who knows who our allies are.
Well, yes, I agree entirely. And I think that's been the problem for the last 8 years. There's been no leadership in the areas that you've just spoken about. President Obama, unfortunately, he began his presidency by running around the world, bowing down to foreign countries, apologizing for America's conduct. That's how he began his presidency. If you begin it that way, there's no hope for leadership in the future. America is the light of the world. America liberated Europe in the Second World War. We liberated France. We defeated the Nazis. We can only do this by concern for human rights, as you mentioned, by standing up for what is right and doing the right thing and taking the lead. Obama's philosophy of leading from behind, whatever that means you're not leading at all. You're sitting back, you're weakening your own stature in your own country, and you're letting the world go into fire. And Hillary Clinton, from what I can see, has done the same thing. They keep talking about how they were able to kill Osama bin Laden. Okay, you know, the military found him and they annihilated him, but there is nothing that they have accomplished that would further human rights in any other countries. For instance, Hillary Clinton, she keeps telling us, or she said at one time, her and her husband, Bill Clinton, when they left the White House, they not only were broke, we were in debt. These are her words, not mine. In the last 10 years or so, they become multi-millionaires.
We all would like to be that broke.
But she made her money working for us. She was a government employee, and she became a multi-millionaire working for we the people, not in her own business like Donald Trump, but in the government. So what did she do? She was on the take from all these nations who have no human rights, some of them, ostensibly to contribute to the Clinton Foundation, which is something else.
She has come under, she's been criticized, and not only by supporters of Donald Trump, others as well, even people who might support her have questioned some of the donations that she has received.
Well, the donations she received from countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, that area of the world, in those countries, women are almost chattel. They're not on an equal par with men. At best, they're second-class citizens. They have to get permission to leave the house. They can't go out on the street unless they're with a male relative. They have to be given permission to work, to drive a car. Most of them can't drive cars. Gay people are thrown off of roofs and simply because they're gay.
It's
and
horrific.
These are the countries she's going to, taking millions. I cannot see a person who's capable of that being a champion of women, which she claims she is. I certainly cannot see her leading our country for the next 4 years or 8 years. Not at all.
And, you know, to speak to my comment, I want to kind of clarify when I say that, you know, she's been criticized even by some people who support her. I will say that people who support her, if nothing else, are at the very least with their vote. You know, people have questioned, you know, your foundation has accepted donations from governments, from individuals that play a big role in countries that, as you just said, don't respect the rights of you know, a broad number of people. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say anything about illegal immigration, because that's really kind of how everything got started. That's how the Trump phenomenon got started. And I think that whether people like Trump or not, and there's surely plenty of people who don't, they're not all Democrats. You have plenty of Republicans, as we know, who don't like him. But, you know, we have unfortunately only 2 minutes left. But I want you to speak to how big of a role do you think his position on illegal immigration, how much of a role that played in really kind of sparking this kind of movement?
Well, there's no question. He was the candidate who brought this to the forefront, this business of immigration, illegal immigration in this country. And I think he's garnered a lot of support, both from Republicans and Democrats and independents who agree with him that illegal immigration is a great threat to our country from an economic point of view, from a jobs point of view, and from a security point of view. A country without borders is not a country. And
without rule of law.
Exactly. And he has indicated in his statements that he is going to terminate any federal aid to sanctuary cities that harbor these illegal immigrants, particularly those that commit crimes. And he intends, and hopefully he will if he's elected, deport all criminal illegal aliens. By that I mean illegal aliens who have committed and been convicted of crimes. Instead of what we're doing now is we're catching them and we're releasing them, and they end up committing crimes again.
Okay, real quick, Ken, how can people get involved if they so wish in the Donald J. Trump campaign right here in Massachusetts?
Go to donaldjtrump.com or go to Trump.com. And you'll get plenty of information and ways to contact folks and get involved.
Thank you so much for appearing on tonight's show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
An honor. And thank you so much for all of you viewing at home. Really grateful. And I will see you again in December. But until then, bye-bye. And remember to vote. There's never an excuse not to vote. I can't say that enough.